I am a little bit nervous about this video because the QTree component is one of those gifts that just keeps on giving. It's very simple by default, as you'll see, but oh my goodness, it runs deep. So I'm going to cover what I can, but there's going to be a part at the end of this video where I'll direct you to the docs to where you can learn more if you want to dig even deeper into this component. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. The first thing I'm going to do here is say justify-center on the page, because that's going to make it a little bit easier to sort of play around with this component. And we're not going to start with the component itself. We're going to start with modeling the data because the tree component is very data driven, as you'll begin to see as we go through this video. So let's say const tree, or maybe even nodes, that's probably more descriptive. And we'll set that equal to an array. And at least for now, this doesn't need to be a ref. So let's just leave it as a normal array. And then this is going to be the first node inside of our tree component. We'll set a label equal to Luke recipes. This is going to be where I keep my recipes, and then I can have some children in there. But let's just see if we get something like that by default by saying Q-tree, and we'll set the nodes equal to our nodes. And there we go, Luke recipes. It doesn't really look like much yet. So we'll come in here and we'll add some children. That's going to be an array, of course. And the label of this can be pancakes, because that's one thing that I can do. I can make pancakes, and a label should be enough there. And let's add another one here for, how about ginger beer? Because a long time ago when I was a kid, I made ginger beer with my dad, and I'm pretty sure it actually ended up being alcoholic, at least by mistake. And so I think I accidentally drank alcohol when I was a lot younger, but that's a story for another day. Now, the reason this isn't quite working properly yet is because Quasar's QTree component needs to know what the keys are for our nodes. And currently, we're just using a label, and they're unique, so I think that will do as our key. Let's come in here and say node-key. But if you were using data on the back end, this might be, for example, the ID of whatever this object is. We'll set the node key equal to label. And there we go. Now we get this little arrow showing that things are ready to go. I can click on here. And there we go, we've got a very basic tree component. Maybe I'll set this to justify start. Yeah, let's do that so it's sort of thrown to the left side. And we probably need less space here, so let's do that. Okay, moving on, we can go even deeper. So let's do the ingredients for making pancakes. And we can do that by saying children and throwing some objects in here. Now these are vegan pancakes, so I'll say flax seeds. Flax seeds are great for making like a replacement for eggs. Really good for binding stuff together, but this is a coding video, so I don't know why I'm telling you that. We've also got flour, and I always have maple syrup on my pancakes. Now, there's a few other things in there, but we'll just leave it like that for now. And here we go, my pancakes, and these are some of the ingredients that you will find in that pancake mix. Cool. What else can we do? Well, we might just expand on this data a little bit more first. So let's come down here. And how about my girlfriend's, some recipes from her. So Shannon, recipes. And then we can say children, which is an array. And that's going to have an object. And she makes a really, really yummy chana masala. I love chana masala. It's one of my favorite things to eat. Children. And let's put some objects in here. And some things that you would have to buy are chickpeas. Copy paste that down a couple of times. And another one is garam masala. I don't know if I'm saying that right, but that's one of the spices that we use. And can of tomatoes. I don't know if that's like sacrilegious to use a can of tomatoes rather than like real tomatoes, but that's what we do. So let's come up here. And there we go. Looks like that's working nicely. Jump into my recipes. Cool. All right, so we've got something up and running that we can play around with. And play we will, because there is plenty to do here. Okay, let's come up here to begin with and set an avatar, which we can just put an image directly into. And one of my favorite sites, picsum.photos/ let's go 100 by 100. And that's going to be my avatar, and let's do an avatar for Shannon. How about 101, or maybe like 120 by 120? This just means we end up with different images there. There we go. So we can easily use images. And when you use avatar, it just kind of like falls into place and looks beautiful by default. So I love that we can just say avatar, whack in an image, and know that it's just going to work beautifully with this component. Another thing I might actually do here is add pictures. So this is like, you can imagine we've got pictures of different recipes maybe, I don't know. And then you could say label is equal to pictures and icon is equal to photo, because I want to show you that you can just use an icon there instead of an avatar. And then I can come down here and say children, and let's just do a few children in here. Sorry, I know this is a very data heavy video, but it kind of needs to be because we need some stuff that we can play around with. So we'll set the image for this one equal to we're actually going to use Pixum, so I can just copy paste that down here. And let's say a picture that's 300 by 200. All right, so notice that we've got icon, we've got avatar, and we've got image. So there's a whole bunch of different ways we can basically display a quote-unquote icon inside of these components. So let's see if that works. And there we go. The image shows up as kind of more like a thumbnail when you use image there. And now let's copy paste that down a few times, and we'll use some different images here. We might just change this last number. 1, 2, 3, just to ensure we get different photos there. Cool. All right, so already, hopefully you can see, like, it's pretty incredible the functionality we can get just by modeling the data. We've, like, barely written any code yet. We're just structuring things, and they're coming out beautifully by default. Now, scrolling up here, let's throw some properties on the QTree component. Node-connectors. So notice that we get these connector lines that sort of show where we're at. If we say no connectors, we get rid of those connector lines. So this is something that I guess you could say it's a little bit more pure. But let's get rid of that and see what else we can do. Text-color, we could set that equal to something like purple, and that'll change our text color. We can also come in here and change the duration. And how about we set that equal to something a bit faster? I believe it's 300 by default. So let's say 150 here. And now when we open these, yeah, they just come out a little bit faster. Maybe even faster than that. Let's try like 80. So that's 80 milliseconds. Yeah, I really like that snappy feel in my applications. I still like the animations, but I think that snappy feel just makes the user feel like there's a little bit more momentum. So I'll often change my durations to something smaller. Another thing we can do is make it dense. So this component is already pretty dense, but if you really need it, you can add dense in there, and that's going to make it super duper hyper dense. And another thing we can do is set some icons here. So we can say icon, and sorry, this wouldn't be on the tree component. This would be on some of our children. How about for our pancakes, we set an icon, because it currently doesn't have anything. And I might set it equal to restaurant. Man, I hate spelling that word. Restaurant menu. Yeah, okay. I got it right the first time. There you go. Miracles do happen. And then we can come down here to the chana masala, and we'll use the same icon there. Yep, makes it look nice. And then I'll use a different one on the ginger beer one because it's a beverage. So here's ginger beer, and we'll set the icon here equal to sports_bar. Save it. And there we go. Just adds a little bit of extra styling, and I think that looks nice. Now, maybe I can be like, look, Shannon, I'm feeling crap these days. I want to stop eating pancakes. I'm not even going to let you make them for me. And that really cool recipe app that I made for you so that we could both like put our recipes on the web, I want to make it so that we can disable pancakes so that it's not even an option anymore. In that case, I can come in here and say disable is equal to true. Come in here. Oh, and I think it's disabled. Yeah. And now I can't even open that up. So we can't even go and buy the ingredients to make pancakes. Thank goodness, because pancakes make me feel really tired and I can't get any good work done. Same with chocolate. Basically anything with sugar. I feel like sugar just saps all the energy from my brain. Anywho, moving on. If I refresh the page here, notice that by default nothing is expanded. So let's scroll up here and add in expand-or. Actually, I think it's default expand or. Make sure we've got the F in there. And there we go. By default, it's going to expand everything. So if I refresh the page, once again, it just expands everything by default. Let's get rid of that and bring us back to our first example. And another thing we can do is say accordion. Accordion. Save it. And now if I open this section here, and then a different section that is a sibling, it closes that section. So we can only show one sibling at a time. So I've kind of showed you the foundation here. Let's look at the different ways we can do modeling on the QTree component. And believe it or not, there's actually 3 different ways we can model data with this component. It's pretty cool. So I'm going to widen this out a little bit. I want to see what we have modeled. So what I'll do here is say, we'll leave that on justify start. Yeah, I might say class is equal to column dash 6. So this is only going to take up the left half of the screen. And then I'll have a card in here, which is going to show the results of our data. And let's just see if this works. Test. It didn't. And that's because I think we need to turn this into a row. Yeah, there we go. So we got the left side where we can select things. And then on the right side, I'm going to show the data. So let's add a Q-card-section in there. And then I might say H4 for the different things that we're going to be looking at, the different things we'll be modeling. So one of them is going to be what is expanded. We can actually model that. We can model things that have been ticked, and we can also model what has been selected. So you can select individual nodes from the list here. And there is actually a difference between selected and ticked, which I will explain in a moment. So now let's come down here and make sure we've got something to model there. So we'll say import, and we're going to pull out ref from view. And then I'm going to come down here and say const expanded is equal to ref. And that will be an array. And ticked is also going to be an array, ticked. And selected actually isn't an array because you can only have one thing selected at a time. If you want to have multiple things selected, really what you want is ticked. Whereas selected is more about selecting one thing at a time. So that's an important thing to know about the difference between ticked and selected. They are slightly different. All right, let's come up here and make sure we're spitting that data out. So here, here, and here, double click, copy, paste, double click, copy, paste, double click, copy, paste, save it. And there we go. Now we can actually see the data and we can go ahead and model it on our component in the left here. So scrolling up, now if I say v-model, and I have to say v-model colon. By the way, this is a View 3 thing. View 3 makes it really easy to model multiple things on one component. And Quasar takes advantage of that. So I want to model expanded, and we'll set that equal to expanded, which is that variable that I set, which is showing up here. So save it, and now when I expand this, Luke Recipes is now added to the expanded list. And by the way, it's using the node key to figure out what is showing up here. So now I can go Shannon Recipes, that's expanded. Let's remove accordion so we can have multiple expanded items. There we go. And now everything that gets expanded shows up here. Now, the cool thing about this is you could save the UI. So you can imagine you could just basically put all of this into local storage. And then when you refresh the page, that would show up again. So actually, I could show you this by expanding everything, copying what we get as a result, coming down here, and then just pasting it in expanded. So now check this out. Refresh the page, and the state is the exact same. So that's kind of cool. If you want to save the state of the application for your users, you can do that using expanded. Now, the next one is ticked. And this is pretty much the same concept. We can say v-model ticked and set that equal to ticked. And I think that's all I have to do. Let's refresh it and see if this works. No, there must be something else. Of course, the tick strategy. Quasar needs to know how ticking works. And I'll show you how this works in a second. We'll say tick-strategy. And I'm going to set that equal to leaf. Save it. And there we go. Notice we get these checkboxes for free now. I can tick that, and everything sitting underneath Luke Recipes will be ticked. Now, the reason only ginger beer is showing up is because pancakes is disabled. So if I come down here, let's get rid of this part because basically I'm lapsing and I want to have some pancakes. Now I can click on here, and not only do we get ginger beer, we also get all of the stuff nested within pancakes. See that? Notice we get everything nested in there as well under ticked. Okay, so it's only going to basically tick things that are at the very bottom. The leaf is what you call that. These are the leaf nodes. So if you imagine a tree, you've got branches and then the leaves are at the very ends of the tree. So these are the leaves. They're the only things that actually show up under ticked, the leaf nodes. That is, unless we change this to strict. So if that's strict, now we can tick things individually. So check this out. Now I can say Luke recipes, but it's not going to tick everything else underneath. I can say ginger beer and just select options like this. So there is a difference between strict and leaf. Leaf allows us to basically select only the leaf nodes, whereas strict allows us to select absolutely anything on an individual level. So it's good to know that because there are different use cases for these two things. And the last one we have is selected, and this one's really straightforward. V-model, and we'll say selected here is equal to selected, so we'll model selected there. And if you select one of the items, well, it shows up in the selected list. So I can open this up, and I can select any of these, and it just allows you to basically select one thing at a time. This would probably work really nice with a QPanel component. So maybe this is like an instruction manual and there's a whole bunch of documents inside of here. And then what you can do is make it so that when you select one of these options, the document then shows up inside of here, inside of a QPanel component. So there's some interesting stuff that you could do with selected. Okay, a couple of styling things related to this. We can say selected dash color and set that equal to something like purple. Save it. And now when I select something, it shows up purple. So that's good to know. And in this case, you'd probably want to choose your primary color because that's going to be a little bit more obvious. All right, that was a bad example going into pictures. And now we can select chana masala. Why isn't this working? Let's refresh the page. All right, I did something weird, but now it's working. And I can select individual things. And since it's the primary color, it's a little bit more obvious to the user in that case that something is selected. I like to have a consistent selected color throughout my application, which I'm always going to make the primary color. It just avoids confusion, especially in situations like this where things can get a little bit busy inside of the component, especially if you add a lot of features in. Another thing we have is control color. And in this case, control color is going to be these checkboxes here. So let's set that equal to, I don't know, maybe our secondary color. And now our checkboxes are going to have that secondary color. And there you go. So that's pretty much it for modeling. There is one more thing I want to show you about the tick strategy. So let's move to a simpler example. I'm going to get rid of expanded and selected. And I'm going to come down here and only include ticked. And then get rid of selected and expanded down here just to simplify things a little bit. So we're only dealing with ticked now. And we're going to do a little bit of a detour. Check this out. We can easily filter what is displayed inside of this tree component. And by the way, this is really cool. I can't believe this feature is available. I didn't even know it was available until preparing for this video. Q-import, this blew my mind. And we can say V-model filter here. And then I can come in and literally just pass through filter. Now, all we have to do is say const filter is equal to a ref, which will be just an empty string by default. And there we go. We've got our filter component. It's kind of messed up our layout a little bit though. How about we come up here? We go Control-Shift-P, wrap that inside of a div, and we take this class here, the column class, and put it on the div. I think that'll fix things up. Yeah, there we go. But anyway, check this out. Now I can open this up, and if we type in flax, it's going to filter down to the flax seeds. How ridiculously easy was it to implement that filtering functionality? Amazing. And if you want, you can even add your own filter method. So you can come in here and say something like filter-method, and you can have a look at the docs for this because this is like a super, this is a very niche-y thing. And I'm guessing you know what you're doing if you've gotten to this point, and you can add in your own filter method. But anyway, moving on, let's see what else we can do. Oh, yes, the reason I showed you this in the first place, we can come in here and say leaf-filtered. Now, actually, before I do that, let me show you why we actually have that functionality. If I come in here and open things up and then say flax, so notice that we can only see these options available to us. If I select here, so everything gets selected, notice that all of these other items get selected, but that's not what I would expect. I would expect only the filtered items to get selected. So now when I close this out, it's like, well, hang on, that's actually selected everything. So if you don't want that functionality, you can say leaf dash filtered. Now, if we come in here and then we just search for flax, select flaxseed there, notice that only flaxseed gets selected. And if we close this out, once again, you can see that only flaxseed was selected. So this can be really important. That would be really frustrating if you wanted that functionality, but you didn't know it was available to you with this tick strategy. Quasar's got your back. Now, as if all of this wasn't enough to blow your mind, and if it hasn't blown your mind, then I don't know what will, then check out these slots. Put it this way, this is kind of like what I've shown you right now so far is like going to the moon. Imagine slots as going to Mars. This is going to blow your mind. If we come in here and say template, we can say hashtag default dash header, and we can change these headers. We can come into each and every one of them individually and change what they look like. So let's pull the props out of here. And then I'll come in here and say div. We're going to do everything from scratch now. Class is equal to row and then items dash center. And if we come down here, we can now add a Q dash icon inside of here. And I'm going to give the icon a name. Let's just do something basic by default. Share and see what that looks like. Oh, it's annoyed because props isn't being used. Okay, how about this? We had a colon there. And then we can say props.node.icon. Otherwise, share. Save it. And there we go. So basically, we've replaced this and gone into the slot and made it look exactly how we want it to look. And we've said, hey, I want you to use this icon unless you already have an icon, in which case just use the icon that you have, which is why we're getting like this beer icon here and this image icon here because we set them earlier. And now we're in total control. So we can come up here and say color is equal to orange. There we go. We can change the size. So we could set that to something a bit bigger, like 32 pixels. We could come in here and say the class is equal to something different, like text dash bold maybe, and that's going to bold things up a little bit. And then we can actually add the result in here. So let's add another div here and then say props.node.label. Because remember, we set on all of our node a label here. So we can safely use props.node.label, and there we go. It works. Another thing you might want to do is make it so that we've got a little bit of margining here. Let's change this to 28 pixels. I think it's a bit too much. So on this icon, I'll say Q-margin right. How about small? Yeah, there we go. And instead of having text bold here, let's take it out of the icon because I think it looks a bit bad on the icon. And then we'll say class is equal to text bold there. There we go. And then maybe change the color to text dash primary. Yeah, really cool. We just have total control here. And by the way, the reason I said item center is because if I don't on that row, it means that these are going to end up off center, which is why I added item center just so that everything aligns nicely. So that's the default header. We have total control over that. And we can come down here and add a template here and also have a body as well. Check this out. We can say default dash body and we'll pull the props out. And now we can, for example, add a subtext. We could say div v-if you have a subtext. So props.get the current node and see if we have a subtext on that node. And if we've got it, then we'll just display it. There we go. We can just copy that, whack it straight in there. Now, none of these actually have a subtext. So let's come down here and we'll go to Shannon section and say subtext. Shannon is an amazing cook. I'm not going to add that to mine because frankly, I'm not that good yet. I still need some practice. And there we go. Now we've got this body slot where we can, well, add whatever we want. But here's the cool part. Scrolling up here, check this out. We can actually tap into individual nodes. And in order to do this, we're going to have to set a header and a body prop on the nodes that we want to tap into. So actually, I'll scroll down again. And let's find a good place that we might want to tap into. How about this pictures node? Let's make it so that we can tap into just this individual node. Header is equal to pictures, and then body is equal to pictures. Now, the reason I'm doing this is it means that we can have a slot that is essentially equal to header dash pictures. And then another one that is basically body dash pictures. So that's why we set these here, so that we can identify them when we're adding them as a slot. So let's give this a try. If I come up here now, let's add another template, and I might even just copy what I've got here. And instead of default body, we can now say body dash pictures. And maybe you want this one to be like really pronounced. So in that case, you could say style is equal to font dash size, I don't know, 2em, for example. And then that subtext is going to be a lot larger. Now, we didn't have a subtext on pictures, so let's go ahead and add one to pictures. Scrolling down here. Subtext. Awesome pictures. All right, let's have a look now. And there we go. It comes up really large. We're able to just target this one specific node. And of course, we can do the exact same thing with headers. So let's find that default header that we created before. I'll copy that, and I'm just going to paste it down here. And now, instead of default header, we're going to say header dash pictures. Save it. And there we go. This is basically using the styling that I had here. And now we can just make it bigger or do whatever we want. So let's set that equal to 42 and then make it blue. And there you have it. Now it's a lot bigger. How cool is that? We have absolute control inside of Quasar's QTree component. And this allows us to create some pretty rich experiences. You could have anything in here. So individual ones could have like a button, for example, and then maybe that button opens a dialogue where you can then, create something within that folder. There's just a huge world of possibilities here. And once again, I said this before, Quasar always has our back. It's always thinking, how can I make sure that anything is possible with this framework? Oh, okay. Calm down, Luke. I love it. So another thing we can do is lazy load some of these nodes. So if you're, for example, fetching folders from a backend, and the place that I work at the moment actually does that. They've got a folder structure, but they don't want to load all of the folders because there's so much data. And so basically they lazy load it. And then when you click on one of these buttons here, it's going to show a spinner. And once it gets the data from the backend, it will then inject it into the node tree. And Quasar makes this so easy to do. Check it out. I might get rid of these templates, so we're back to a simpler example. Looks like there's another one here. Save it. There we go. And we'll have one here for lazy loading. And in order for it to be lazy loading, you have to set lazy equal to true. Now let's come in here and set a label, and that's going to be equal to friends. So maybe this is like loading a friends list. Save it. And there we go. Lazy is set to true. And that's going to start loading, but it's going to load indefinitely because we haven't actually implemented a lazy load function. So let's refresh the page to fix that up. Scrolling up here. And now we can come in here and say at lazy dash load. And we'll set that equal to a function, which will be on lazy load. And I'm going to do a really crude example here just to sort of give you an idea, a sort of like a leg up on how this might look. So function is equal to lazy load or on lazy load. And we've got quite a few things available to us here. In fact, let me just print them out. So let's say context, and then we'll console.log that context. Context might not be the right word there, but you get the idea. Click on here, and let's say what we've got available to us. We've got done. So we're going to call that when we're done, and we're going to pass it the children. So once we have the data, we then pass it shaped like these other nodes. We pass it into the done function. You've also got fail, so you can say when it failed. You can get the key so that you can use that key, which is in this case friends, to figure out what you have to fetch. So for example, the key might be an ID, and you can use that key to then fetch the correct data. And then it also gives you the entirety of the friend node, just in case you need that. All right, so let's go ahead and implement something crude. And I'm going to pluck out of here node, key, done, and fail. I don't think I'm actually going to use them all, but we'll just pluck them out so that you can see it there and know what's available. Now we'll say set timeout, and after 1.5 seconds, what are we going to do? Well, we're just going to call done and send an array of our data. So the stuff that we have to do, the work we have to do is very minimal. We basically just say, hey, when I've got the data from the back end, which obviously we need to write that code anyway, I'm just going to call this done function and send it through. So now we can come in here and say label is equal to the name of the friend. So I've got a friend called Ross. And what other friends do I have? I actually don't have a lot of friends, to be honest. I'm a bit of a loner, but that's how I like to live my life. We've also got Shannon. She's my friend for life. And another one we have is Josh. And Josh was my best friend when I studied classical piano. So here we go. We can click on here, wait a moment, and then it loads all of my friends. How cool is that? And look at this code. I mean, come on, that is so simple and straightforward to implement. So that's pretty much it for Quasar's QTree component, at least for this video. There is a few more like bits and pieces that you can find by looking at the documentation. And what I'm about to do, I don't usually like to do in my videos, but I think this is a bit of an exception. I'm going to show you the docs here. And specifically, I want you to note that at the bottom, we've got this huge section that shows you the node's model structure. So you might want to take the time to have a little bit of a look at this so you know what the structure of a node looks like if you want to dig a little bit deeper into what's available to you within a node. I mean, some of this stuff I didn't even know about. I didn't know that there was a handler there. I probably should have done better research for this video. But yeah, you get the idea. And on top of that, if I scroll to the top of the documentation now and go to methods, we've actually got a whole bunch of methods that we can call. So you can have a look at this and play around with some of the methods that are available to you. Some of these could be particularly useful for your application. And there you have it. That is Quasar's QTree component. I hope you enjoyed this video. I really enjoyed making it for you. I really enjoyed researching it as well because there's just such a breadth of stuff that's available to us within this component. I'll see you in the next video where we'll explore something else. All right, bye for now.